In a galaxy fractured by endless wars, peace was nothing more than a distant dream. For centuries, people whispered about a mythical warship called the Starfire. It was said to be powered by starlight itself, glowing brighter than any sun and capable of unmatched destruction or salvation. Some told tales of how it could wipe out entire fleets with a single blast, while others claimed it had once brought warring civilizations together under its radiant wings. But most dismissed these stories as mere legends, fairy tales told to comfort those who longed for hope in hopeless times. Commander Illyra Voss didn't believe in fairy tales. She never had. A hardened leader with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind, Illyra commanded the Outer Rim Fleet, a ragtag group of ships defending scattered colonies on the edge of known space. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and running dangerously low on supplies. Their enemy, the Dominion, a ruthless empire bent on galactic domination, had been relentless in their attacks. Every day brought new losses, new scars. Surrender seemed inevitable, but Illyra refused to give up. Not yet. One evening, aboard her flagship, the Eclipse, Illyra sat in a dimly lit war room surrounded by her advisors. Maps of contested sectors floated holographically above the table, marked with red zones where Dominion forces had gained ground. Morale was at an all-time low, and tempers flared during discussions. "What if we retreat deeper into uncharted space?" suggested Lieutenant Kale, his voice tinged with desperation. "We can regroup, rebuild, and abandon billions of civilians to the Dominion's mercy," snapped Captain Rin, slamming her fist on the table. "That's not leadership. That's cowardice." Illyra raised a hand to silence them both. Her gaze swept across the room, taking in the weary faces of her crew. "There's no point arguing about retreat when we barely have enough fuel to stay here," she said firmly. "What we need is a solution, a way to turn this fight around." It was then that Advisor Maris, the oldest member of the council, cleared his throat. His frail frame belied the wisdom etched into every wrinkle of his face. "Commander," he began hesitantly, What if the solution isn't something we've tried before? What if it's something extraordinary?" The room fell silent. Everyone knew what he meant. The Starfire. The legend. Illyra frowned, leaning back in her chair. "You're talking about fairy tales now, Maris. We don't have time for myths." But Maris pressed on. "Maybe it's not just a myth. There have been reports, whispers, really of strange energy readings near the edge of our territory. Unexplained phenomena. Ships vanishing without a trace. Could it be possible that the Starfire exists after all?" Illyra sighed, rubbing her temples. She wanted to dismiss the idea outright, but something stopped her. Perhaps it was the flicker of hope in Maris' eyes, or maybe it was the stubborn part of her that refused to let go of even the slimmest chance. Finally, she stood up, her decision made. "Fine," she said. "Send out recon drones to investigate these readings. If there's even a shred of truth to this story, we'll find it." Days turned into weeks as the fleet waited anxiously for news. Then, one fateful morning, a scout ship returned with astonishing findings. Near the edge of known space, they'd detected an anomaly, a massive structure drifting silently through the void. Its silhouette glowed faintly, pulsing with light like a heartbeat. The description matched the legends perfectly. Illyra stared at the grainy images displayed on her screen, her pulse quickening. Could it really be true? Was the Starfire real? Whatever it was, one thing was certain. It deserved closer inspection. And so, against protocol, and despite the risks, Illyra made the bold decision to lead the investigation herself. Gathering her bravest officers and preparing her fastest ship, she set course for the mysterious object. As the Eclipse approached the glowing behemoth, Illyra felt a strange mix of awe and unease. This wasn't just a relic of the past. It was something far greater, something alive. Whatever awaited them inside, she knew one thing for sure. Their lives, and perhaps the fate of the galaxy, would never be the same again. The Dominion's grip tightened around the galaxy with every passing day. Their warships, dark and menacing like storm clouds, swept across star systems, leaving devastation in their wake. Colonies that once thrived were now reduced to rubble, their skies choked with ash. Refugees poured into the Outer Rim Fleet's territory, desperate for safety, but resources were stretched thin. Food rations dwindled, medical supplies ran out, and fuel reserves dropped to critical levels. The fleet could barely keep its own ships operational, let alone protect the millions who looked to them for salvation. Commander Illyra Voss stood on the observation deck of the Eclipse, staring at the bleak expanse of space beyond the viewport. Her arms were crossed tightly over her chest, as if trying to hold herself together against the weight of her responsibilities. Behind her, Lieutenant Kale approached hesitantly, his boots clicking softly against the metal floor. "Commander," he began, his voice low, "we've received another distress signal from Arcturus Prime. They're under heavy fire." Illyra closed her eyes briefly, exhaling through clenched teeth. Another colony begging for help they couldn't provide. "Tell me something I don't know," she muttered bitterly. Kale shifted uncomfortably. "There's more. The Dominion has deployed reinforcements. If we don't act soon, Arcturus will fall within hours." Illyra turned to face him, her sharp gaze cutting through the dim light of the room. "And what exactly do you expect me to do?" she snapped. "Our fighters are stretched too thin, our weapons are outdated, and half our fleet is running on fumes. Do you think I can just magic up a solution?" Kale flinched but didn't back down. "No, Mom. But maybe there's still hope. Some of the crew believe in the Starfire. Maybe it's time we considered." Illyra cut him off with a sharp wave of her hand. "Enough about the Starfire," she barked. "It's a fairy tale, Kale. A distraction we don't have time for. Right now, we need real answers, not bedtime stories." But deep down, even Illyra wasn't sure what to believe anymore. The reports from the edge of space had unsettled her. The glowing structure, the strange energy readings, it all felt too significant to ignore. Still, trusting in legends seemed reckless when lives hung in the balance. Yet, as much as she tried to push the thought aside, a small part of her clung to the possibility that the Starfire might be real. What if it truly existed? What if it held the power to turn the tide of this war? Later that evening, Illyra called an emergency council meeting aboard the Eclipse. Officers and advisors gathered around the holographic table, their faces etched with exhaustion and despair. When Illyra entered the room, the murmurs died down instantly, replaced by tense silence. She took her seat at the head of the table, her expression unreadable. "We're losing this war," she said bluntly, cutting straight to the point. "The Dominion is stronger, faster, and better equipped than us. We can't keep fighting them head-on, not like this. So tell me, what options do we have left?" For a moment, no one spoke. Then Advisor Maris leaned forward, his frail hands trembling slightly as he clasped them together. "Commander," he said quietly, "perhaps it's time we stop looking for conventional solutions. You saw the scout ship's report. That object near the edge of space, it matches the descriptions of the Starfire. It's worth investigating further." Captain Rinn scoffed loudly. "You're suggesting we risk our last remaining ships chasing after some myth? That's madness." "It's not madness," Maris countered firmly. "It's hope. And right now, hope is all we have." Illyra listened intently, weighing the arguments. Conventional tactics had failed them repeatedly. Retreating deeper into uncharted space would only delay the inevitable. Surrender was unthinkable. Could the Starfire really offer a way out of this nightmare? Or was it just another dead end? Finally, she stood up, her decision made. "Fine," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. "We'll send a team to investigate the anomaly. But if this turns out to be another wild goose chase, we're done chasing shadows." Agreed? Her officers nodded reluctantly, though skepticism lingered in their eyes. As the meeting adjourned, Illyra remained behind, staring at the holographic map of the galaxy. Somewhere out there, near the edge of everything they knew, lay the answer, or perhaps just another cruel twist of fate. Either way, she owed it to her people to find out. With resolve hardening in her heart, Alara prepared herself for the journey ahead. Whatever awaited them, she vowed to face it head-on. For her crew, for the colonies counting on her, and for the faint glimmer of hope that refused to die. The journey to the edge of known space was tense and silent, broken only by the hum of engines and occasional updates from the navigation crew. Commander Alara Voss stood on the bridge of the Eclipse, her eyes fixed on the viewscreen as the glowing anomaly grew larger with each passing moment. It wasn't just a ship. It felt alive, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat, its surface shimmering with hues of gold and deep blue that shifted unpredictably. The sight filled her with awe, but also unease. This thing defied everything she knew about engineering, physics, even reality itself. As they approached, strange phenomena began to occur. Time seemed to stretch and compress. Seconds felt like minutes, then snapped back into place without warning. Crew members reported vivid hallucinations, visions of distant stars collapsing, ancient civilizations rising and falling, and whispers in languages no one could understand. Some claimed they saw glimpses of their own pasts or futures, moments so personal it left them shaken. Lieutenant Kale stumbled onto the bridge, his face pale and sweat beading on his forehead. "Commander," he stammered, gripping the back of a chair for support, "something's wrong. People are seeing things, hearing things. I thought I saw my brother. He died years ago, but he was standing right there, clear as day." The Lyra turned to him sharply, her voice calm but firm. "Stay focused, Lieutenant. Whatever's happening, we can't let it distract us. We're here for answers, not ghost stories." But even she couldn't deny the strangeness surrounding them. The air aboard the Eclipse felt heavier, charged with an energy that prickled against her skin. And then there was the Starfire. Up close, it dwarfed their vessel, its sleek curves radiating an otherworldly beauty. It didn't look like any warship she'd ever seen. It was more organic than mechanical, as if it had grown rather than been built. Strange symbols etched into its surface glowed softly, reacting to their presence. "We're being scanned," announced Captain Rin from her station. Her fingers danced across the console, analyzing data streams flooding in from the ship's sensors. "It's probing us. Testing us. Testing us for what?" Alara demanded, stepping closer to the viewscreen. Before Rin could answer, a sudden jolt rocked the Eclipse. Alarms blared as the crew scrambled to stabilize the ship. On the viewscreen, the Starfire's glow intensified, bathing the entire bridge in golden light. Then, a voice, not audible, but resonating directly in their minds, spoke. "You seek truth. You seek power. But do you seek wisdom?" The words echoed through Alara's thoughts, reverberating with a tone both ancient and infinite. She froze, her breath catching in her throat. Was this real? Or was it another hallucination? Around her, the crew reacted similarly, some clutching their heads, others staring wide-eyed at nothing in particular. "Who, or what, are you?" Alara asked aloud, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. The response came immediately, calm yet commanding. "I am the Starfire, guardian of balance, protector of life, created long before your kind walked among the stars." Alara swallowed hard, forcing herself to remain composed. "Why have you revealed yourself now? After all this time?" "Because the galaxy teeters on the brink of ruin," the voice replied. "Your wars bleed the stars dry. If unchecked, your destruction will consume all." Captain Rin leaned forward urgently. "Does this mean you'll help us fight the Dominion? Will you turn the tide of the war?" The pause that followed felt endless. When the Starfire finally responded, its tone carried a note of caution. "I am not a weapon to be wielded lightly. To command me, you must prove yourselves worthy. Only those who value unity over conquest may unlock my true potential." Alara exchanged glances with her officers, uncertainty flickering across their faces. Worthy? What did that even mean? Before anyone could ask, the Starfire continued. Enter my halls, Commander Illyra Vos. Face the trials within. Prove your heart aligns with mine, or leave this place forever. The glowing symbols on the Starfire's surface flared brighter, creating an opening, a doorway leading inside the massive structure. Illyra hesitated, weighing the risks. Whatever awaited them beyond that threshold, it was unlike anything humanity had faced before. Yet, turning back wasn't an option. They'd come too far to walk away now. Taking a deep breath, Illyra straightened her posture and addressed her crew. Prepare boarding teams. We're going in. As she led the way toward the airlock, her mind raced with questions. Trials, worthiness, unity? None of it made sense, but one thing was certain. The Starfire held secrets powerful enough to change the course of history. Whether it would save them or destroy them remained to be seen. The interior of the Starfire was unlike anything Commander Illyra Vos had ever seen. It felt less like stepping into a machine and more like entering the body of a living being. The walls pulsed faintly, glowing with soft, bioluminescent patterns that shifted as if breathing. Strange symbols etched into every surface shimmered in response to their presence, casting an ethereal light over the group of officers who followed Illyra cautiously inside. The air hummed with energy, vibrating through their bones, and the silence was almost oppressive, broken only by the sound of their footsteps echoing softly against the organic floor. Illyra led the way, her hand resting instinctively on the hilt of her sidearm, though she doubted it would do much good against something this otherworldly. Her crew stayed close behind her, their faces pale but determined. Lieutenant Kale clutched a scanner, attempting to gather data, but the readings were erratic. Spikes of energy one moment, complete blankness the next. Whatever the Starfire was made of, it defied conventional science. Stay alert, Illyra ordered under her breath, her eyes scanning the corridor ahead. We don't know what we're dealing with here. As they ventured deeper, the ship seemed to guide them, opening pathways and sealing others shut behind them without warning. There were no doors or controls, just smooth transitions, as if the Starfire anticipated their movements. Finally, they reached a vast chamber at the heart of the vessel. In its center floated a crystalline core, suspended in midair, radiating waves of golden light that bathed the entire room. The core pulsed rhythmically, like a heartbeat, and the symbols around it flared brighter as Illyra approached. This must be its power source, Captain Rin whispered, awe evident in her voice. She reached out hesitantly, but Illyra grabbed her wrist before she could touch it. Careful, Illyra warned. We don't know how it works, or what it might do. Before anyone else could react, the core emitted a low hum, growing louder until it filled the chamber. A wave of warmth washed over them. And suddenly, the same voice from earlier resonated in their minds once again. You stand before my essence. My purpose is clear: to protect life, preserve balance, and extinguish corruption. But I will not act without conviction. Prove your worthiness, Commander Illyra Vos. Illyra took a step forward, her jaw tightening. What does that mean? How do I prove myself? The voice responded calmly, yet with an undeniable weight. Face 3 trials. Each will challenge your resolve, your wisdom, and your unity. Only then will you unlock my full potential and determine whether you are fit to command me. Before Illyra could ask for clarification, the chamber began to shift. The walls dissolved into swirling mists, and the glowing symbols transformed into vivid images projected directly into their minds. The first trial manifested instantly, a vision of a battlefield littered with bodies, the sky choked with smoke. In the distance stood a young girl clutching a tattered doll, crying for help. Behind her loomed a Dominion warship, weapons trained and ready to fire. You must choose, the voice intoned. Save the innocent, or destroy the enemy. Decide wisely. The consequences ripple across time. Illyra hesitated, her heart pounding. Destroying the warship would eliminate a major threat, but doing so might also harm the girl. Saving her meant risking countless lives if the Dominion continued unchecked. Her mind raced, weighing the options. Finally, she raised her hand, not toward the warship, but toward the girl. "I won't sacrifice innocence for vengeance," she said firmly. The vision shifted abruptly, replaced by another scene. A council meeting where factions argued bitterly, each blaming the others for the galaxy's collapse. This time, the trial tested her ability to unite divided voices. Though tempers flared and accusations flew, Illyra listened patiently, finding common ground and encouraging cooperation. Slowly, the arguing subsided, replaced by tentative agreement. For the final trial, the Starfire plunged her into a deeply personal nightmare, a replay of her darkest failure. She relived the day when her decisions had cost hundreds of lives during a failed mission. The guilt still haunted her, but now she faced it head-on, acknowledging her mistakes and vowing to learn from them. When the trials ended, the chamber returned to its original state, the crystalline core glowing brighter than ever. The voice spoke once more. "You have shown courage, wisdom, and humility. You are worthy." With those words, the Starfire awakened fully, its systems coming online with a triumphant surge of energy. Symbols danced across its surfaces, and the ship itself seemed to hum with approval. For the first time, Illyra felt a connection, not just to the Starfire, but to its purpose. But as the crew celebrated quietly, Illyra couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest challenges were yet to come. The Starfire had chosen her, but mastering its power would require more than strength. It would demand sacrifice, and somewhere deep down, she wondered if she was truly prepared for what lay ahead. The Starfire's awakening left Commander Illyra Voss both exhilarated and uneasy. The crystalline core pulsed steadily now, its golden light filling the chamber with a warm glow that seemed almost alive. The ship had deemed her worthy. But worthiness wasn't just about passing tests. It was about understanding the responsibility that came with such immense power. As the crew gathered around, murmuring in awe, Illyra stepped closer to the core, her mind racing with questions. "What happens now?" she asked aloud, though she wasn't sure if the Starfire would respond. "You have unlocked my potential." The voice echoed in their minds once more, calm but commanding. "But mastery requires deeper understanding. Face your final lesson, the essence of unity." Before anyone could react, the chamber shifted again, plunging them into another trial. This time, however, the vision wasn't confined to one place or moment. It spanned centuries, showing fragments of humanity's history. Wars fought over land, resources, beliefs, civilizations rising and falling under the weight of greed and division. Countless lives lost because people refused to see beyond their differences. Illyra watched as scenes unfolded before her eyes, soldiers charging into battle, families torn apart by conflict, leaders exploiting fear to maintain control. Each image carried a heaviness that pressed down on her chest, forcing her to confront the flaws of her own species. Then, the visions turned inward, revealing moments from her own life. Arguments with fellow officers, decisions driven by pride rather than reason, times when she prioritized victory over compassion. "You're showing me our failures," Illyra said, her voice trembling. "Why? To punish us?" "No," the Starfire replied gently. "To teach you. Unity is not the absence of conflict. It is the ability to rise above it. To find strength in diversity, not division. Only then can you truly wield my power." The next part of the trial forced Illyra to relive a pivotal moment from her past, a decision she'd made years ago during a critical mission. She'd chosen to abandon a damaged supply ship carrying vital medical aid, believing it was necessary to save her fleet. The choice had haunted her ever since, knowing innocent lives had been sacrificed for strategic gain. Now, standing in that same moment again, she saw the faces of those aboard the doomed vessel. Men, women, children, all pleading for help. This time, she acted differently. Instead of abandoning them, she ordered her crew to tow the ship to safety, even at great risk to their own position. It was a gamble, one that required trust in her team and faith in their shared purpose. When the simulation ended, Elira felt a surge of relief, but also clarity. Sacrificing others for short-term gains wasn't leadership. True strength lay in protecting everyone, no matter the cost. The final challenge came without warning. The Starfire transported her consciousness into a vast, star-filled void where she encountered representations of her crew, each embodying different aspects of humanity. Courage, doubt, ambition, fear, hope. They argued fiercely, pulling her in opposite directions, testing her ability to keep them united despite their differences. "You can't please everyone," shouted one figure, symbolizing frustration. "But you can inspire them," countered another, representing resilience. Elira realized the key wasn't to silence dissent, but to channel it toward a common goal. Slowly, she brought the figures together, reminding them of their shared mission: to protect life, preserve peace, and fight for a better future. One by one, they joined hands, forming a circle of light that grew brighter until it consumed the darkness around them. When the trial ended, Elira found herself back in the heart of the Starfire, surrounded by her actual crew. Their expressions mirrored hers, exhausted yet triumphant. The crystalline core glowed brighter than ever, humming with approval. "You have learned," the Starfire intoned. "Unity is not weakness. It is your greatest weapon. Use it wisely." As the ship's systems fully integrated with her mind, granting her access to its controls, Elira felt a profound sense of connection, not just to the Starfire, but to everything it represented. Power, yes, but also responsibility. Hope, tempered by humility. Yet, as the crew prepared to leave the chamber, Elira couldn't shake the feeling that these lessons were only the beginning. The Dominion still loomed large, and wielding the Starfire's power wouldn't be easy. But for the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself a small flicker of optimism. If humanity could learn to unite, even briefly, it might stand a chance against the darkness threatening to consume them all. And with that thought, she led her team back toward the bridge, ready to face whatever came next. While Elira Voss and her crew were learning to master the Starfire, the Dominion wasted no time exploiting their absence. With the Outer Rim Fleet's flagship, the Eclipse, missing from the front lines, the Dominion launched a devastating assault on the scattered colonies under its protection. Entire planets fell like dominoes, their defenses crumbling under the relentless barrage of enemy warships. Refugees fled in droves, overcrowding the few remaining safe zones. Communication lines collapsed, leaving isolated outposts desperate for aid they knew wouldn't come. Elira received the news just as she was beginning to familiarize herself with the Starfire's controls. A faint transmission crackled through the ship's systems, barely audible over static. It was Captain Rin, her voice strained and panicked. "Commander, we need you, now. The Dominion has unleashed everything they've got. If you don't return soon, there won't be anything left to save." Elira clenched her fists, torn between two impossible choices. On one hand, she had barely scratched the surface of the Starfire's capabilities. Rushing into battle without fully understanding its power could lead to disaster. On the other hand, every second she delayed meant more lives lost, more worlds burned to ash. She turned to her crew, who stood silently awaiting her decision. "We can't wait any longer," she said firmly, her voice cutting through the tension. "The Dominion isn't going to give us time to prepare. We have to act now, even if we're not ready." Lieutenant Kell stepped forward, his expression grim but resolute. "Commander, if this ship is as powerful as it seems, maybe we don't need to be ready. Maybe all we need is enough courage to use it." Elira nodded slowly, appreciating the sentiment but knowing the truth was far more complicated. Courage alone wouldn't win this fight. Strategy and precision would be key. Still, Kell's words reminded her why they'd come here in the first place: to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. With a deep breath, Elira took her place at the helm of the Starfire. The crystalline core pulsed in response, sensing with her thoughts and translating them into commands. She felt a strange connection to the ship, as though it understood her intentions before she even voiced them. For the first time, she grasped the enormity of what they had stumbled upon, a vessel capable of reshaping the galaxy, for better or worse. "Set course for the front lines," she ordered, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "Maximum speed." The Starfire surged forward, moving faster than anything Elira had ever experienced. Stars blurred into streaks of light as the ship entered hyperspace, leaving ripples of energy in its wake. The journey that would have taken days aboard the Eclipse lasted mere hours. When they emerged near the embattled sector, the devastation was immediately visible. Dominion ships swarmed like locusts, bombarding defenseless colonies while smaller rebel fleets tried, and failed, to hold them back. Elira's heart sank as she surveyed the carnage. Burning cities cast eerie glows against the night sides of planets, and debris fields marked the graves of countless ships. But amidst the chaos, something stirred within her, not despair, but resolve. This wasn't just a battlefield. It was a test of everything she'd learned aboard the Starfire. "Prepare for combat," she commanded, her tone sharp and commanding. "Target the largest Dominion vessels first. Disable their weapons systems, but avoid unnecessary casualties. We're here to end this war, not escalate it." As the Starfire moved into position, its presence sent shockwaves through the Dominion fleet. Sensors scrambled, weapons malfunctioned, and confusion spread among the enemy ranks. Soldiers gazed up at the glowing behemoth in awe, unsure whether they were witnessing divine intervention or technological terror. Elira broadcast a message across all frequencies, her voice clear and unwavering. "This is Commander Elira Voss of the Starfire. Stand down or face annihilation. Your reign of destruction ends today." For a moment, silence reigned. Then, predictably, the Dominion responded, not with surrender, but defiance. Their flagship fired a volley of missiles toward the Starfire, only for the projectiles to disintegrate harmlessly against its shimmering shield. Elira allowed herself a small smile. "So be it," she murmured. The Starfire unleashed its first strike, a pulse of radiant energy that disabled an entire squadron of Dominion cruisers without causing a single casualty. Cheers erupted among the rebel forces, who began rallying around the mythical warship. But Elira knew this was only the beginning. The real challenge lay ahead, and the cost of failure was unimaginable. With determination burning in her eyes, she gripped the controls tighter. The fight had begun. The Starfire's entrance into the battlefield was nothing short of spectacular. Its radiant form dwarfed even the largest Dominion dreadnoughts, glowing like a second sun against the dark expanse of space. Soldiers on both sides paused mid-action, their weapons frozen in place as they stared at the impossible sight. For centuries, the Starfire had been dismissed as a fairy tale, a relic of ancient myths meant to inspire hope during hopeless times. Now, it was real, and its arrival sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Dominion commanders scrambled to make sense of what they were seeing. Sensors failed to penetrate the Starfire's glowing hull, rendering their targeting systems useless. Communication channels buzzed with frantic orders and panicked voices. "What is that thing?" One officer shouted over the comm. "It's not on any database." Another snapped back. "Does it matter? Destroy it before it destroys us." But destruction wasn't so simple. Every weapon fired at the Starfire. Missiles, plasma cannons, energy beams dissolved harmlessly upon contact with its shimmering shields. The ship didn't retaliate immediately. Instead, it moved with an eerie grace, weaving effortlessly between enemy formations. Its presence alone seemed to disrupt Dominion operations, causing engines to stall, weapons to misfire, and entire squadrons to descend into chaos. Elira Voss watched the unfolding scene from the bridge, her hand steady on the controls. She could feel the Starfire responding to her thoughts, anticipating her commands before she even voiced them. It wasn't just a tool, it was an extension of herself, amplifying her willpower across the battlefield. Yet, as awe-inspiring as it was, she knew this power came with responsibility. Focus on disabling their ships, she instructed her crew. No unnecessary casualties. We're here to end the war, not escalate it. Her words echoed throughout the ship, but skepticism lingered among some officers. Lieutenant Cale leaned forward, his brow furrowed. Commander, you heard them. They're not going to stand down. What happens if we can't stop them without, well, stopping them completely? Elira hesitated, knowing he had a point. The Dominion had never shown mercy, and expecting them to surrender now felt naive. But she also understood the Starfire's purpose, to protect life, not destroy it. That balance was delicate, and tipping too far in either direction could have catastrophic consequences. With a deep breath, Elira activated the Starfire's primary weapon system. A pulse of golden light surged outward, enveloping multiple Dominion vessels in its glow. Engines sputtered, weapons deactivated, and communication lines went dead, all without causing physical damage or loss of life. Rebel forces cheered as the disabled ships drifted helplessly, their crews abandoning them in escape pods. But the Dominion wasn't finished yet. From the heart of their fleet emerged a massive flagship, the Obsidian Revenant, a monstrosity bristling with armaments and cloaked in shadowy energy fields. At its helm stood Grand Admiral Drexus, the ruthless leader of the Dominion forces. His voice boomed across all frequencies, laced with venomous fury. So the legend reveals itself, he sneered. I don't care if you're a ghost or a god. You'll burn like everything else. Before Elira could respond, the Obsidian Revenant unleashed its ultimate weapon, a black hole generator. Designed to consume entire star systems, it began to pull nearby ships and debris into its growing vortex. Panic erupted among rebel forces as gravity distorted wildly, threatening to drag everyone into oblivion. Elira's mind raced. The Starfire might be powerful, but even it couldn't withstand the crushing force of a singularity for long. She needed a plan, and fast. Turning to her crew, she issued rapid orders. Divert all power to the shields. Prepare for evasive maneuvers. And someone tell me how close we are to redirecting that black hole. Captain Rin worked furiously at her console, sweat beading on her forehead. We can use the Starfire's energy field to destabilize the generator, but it'll take time, and risk destabilizing nearby stars. If we do this wrong, we could trigger a supernova. Elira nodded grimly. Sacrifices would have to be made. Do it, she said firmly. Save as many as we can. As the crew executed her orders, the Starfire positioned itself between the black hole and the fleeing rebel ships, acting as a barrier against the relentless pull. Golden light clashed with swirling darkness, creating a spectacle that left spectators breathless. For a moment, it seemed like the galaxy held its collective breath. Then, with a deafening roar, the Starfire unleashed a blinding burst of energy, destabilizing the black hole generator. The vortex collapsed inward, dragging the Obsidian Revenant along with it. Cheers erupted from the rebel forces, but Elira remained silent, her eyes fixed on the aftermath. Victory had come at a cost, and the Starfire bore the scars of battle. As alarms blared aboard the ship, warning of critical damage, Elira realized their journey was far from over. The Dominion might have been dealt a devastating blow, but the Starfire's survival was no longer guaranteed. And somewhere deep inside, Elira wondered if they truly won, or merely delayed the inevitable. The collapse of the black hole generator was a moment of triumph, but also devastation, as the Obsidian Revenant disappeared into the implosion, taking Grand Admiral Drexus and much of the Dominion fleet with it. The rebel forces erupted in cheers. For the first time in years, the tide of the war seemed to shift decisively in their favor. But aboard the Starfire, the mood was far from celebratory. Warning lights flashed across the bridge, bathing the crew in red hues as alarms blared relentlessly. The strain of destabilizing the black hole had pushed the Starfire beyond its limits. Its glowing hull flickered erratically, and sections of the ship began to darken as systems failed one by one. Elira Voss gripped the controls tightly, her knuckles white. as she struggled to maintain stability. "Damage report," she barked, her voice cutting through the chaos. Captain Rin worked frantically at her console, her face pale but focused. "Multiple energy conduits are offline. Structural integrity is down to 40%. If we don't stabilize soon, the core could overload." Elira's mind raced. They'd saved countless lives by redirecting the black hole, but now they faced another crisis: the potential destruction of the Starfire itself. She turned to Lieutenant Kale, who stood nearby, his expression grim. "What about repair protocols? Can we reroute power manually?" Kale shook his head. "The damage is too widespread. Even if we tried, it would take hours, and we don't have that kind of time." Before anyone could respond, the Starfire's voice resonated in their minds once more, softer this time, but tinged with urgency. "My essence weakens. To preserve balance, I must restore equilibrium. Trust me." "What does that mean?" Elira demanded aloud, though she knew the ship wouldn't answer directly. Moments later, the crystalline core at the heart of the Starfire pulsed violently, emitting waves of golden light that surged through the vessel. The crew staggered as the ship shuddered violently, throwing them off balance. On the view screen, they watched as the remnants of the black hole's collapse transformed into something new, a swirling mass of radiant energy that enveloped the battlefield. "What's happening?" Lieutenant Kale shouted, clutching the edge of a console for support. "It's healing," Captain Rin whispered, awestruck. "Look." The swirling energy wasn't destructive, it was restorative. Damaged rebel ships repaired themselves almost instantly, their hulls sealing shut and engines roaring back to life. Escape pods carrying survivors were drawn gently toward friendly vessels, where automated systems retrieved them safely. Even the scorched surfaces of nearby planets began to recover, their atmospheres stabilizing and vegetation regenerating in patches visible from orbit. Elira stared at the scene in disbelief. The Starfire wasn't just a weapon, it was a force of creation, capable of undoing the horrors of war as easily as it could combat them. Yet, the ship itself paid a heavy price. Its glow dimmed further, and cracks began to form along its surface, leaking faint streams of light into space. "We're losing it," Captain Rin said quietly, her voice trembling. "It's sacrificing itself to save us." "No," Elira snapped, refusing to accept defeat. "There has to be another way. We can't lose the Starfire. Not after everything it's done." The ship's voice returned, weaker this time, but still filled with calm resolve. "This is my purpose, Commander. To give life, so others may thrive. Do not mourn me. Carry the light forward." Tears welled up in Elira's eyes, but she blinked them away, steeling herself. She placed a hand on the control panel, feeling the faint hum of the Starfire's energy beneath her palm. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking slightly. "For everything." As the last reserves of the Starfire's power drained away, the ship's glow faded entirely, leaving behind only silence. On the view screen, the battlefield was unrecognizable. Rebel forces cheered, reunited and revitalized, while the remnants of the Dominion fleet retreated in disarray. But for Elira and her crew, the victory felt bittersweet. The Starfire had saved them, but at great cost. It was gone, reduced to stardust scattered across the void. Or so they thought. In the final moments before the ship dissolved completely, the crystalline core released a burst of energy that surged through the bridge, embedding itself in Elira's consciousness. She gasped, clutching her head as visions flooded her mind, memories of the Starfire's creation, its purpose, and its deepest hopes for the galaxy. When the surge subsided, Elira opened her eyes, finding her crew staring at her in concern. She straightened slowly, a newfound determination burning within her. "The Starfire isn't truly gone," she said firmly. "Its spirit lives on, in us. And now, it's our turn to carry the fight forward." With those words, she led her team back to the helm, ready to rebuild what had been lost and forge a brighter future. The legend of the Starfire might have ended, but its legacy had only just begun. The battlefield was eerily quiet now, the Dominion forces in full retreat as their once dominant fleet scattered like ash in the wind. The rebels cheered from their repaired ships, their voices crackling over comms channels filled with gratitude and disbelief. "We're saved," one pilot exclaimed. "The Starfire did it," another echoed. But aboard what remained of the Starfire, there was no celebration, only a somber acknowledgement of the cost. Elira Voss stood at the edge of the command deck, staring out at the glowing remnants of the ship's core. It pulsed faintly, its light dimming with each passing second. The cracks along the walls had spread further, and the hum that once resonated through the vessel was now a faint whisper. She could feel the Starfire's presence fading, not just physically, but within her own mind as well. Its consciousness, which had guided her so steadfastly, grew quieter, softer, until it felt like a distant echo. "Commander," Lieutenant Kale approached cautiously, his voice low. "The structural integrity is down to 15%. We need to evacuate before—" He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Evacuate. The word struck Elira like a blow. Leave the Starfire behind. After everything it had done, for them, for the galaxy, it didn't seem right. Yet staying meant risking their lives for a cause already lost. The ship had made its choice, sacrificing itself to heal the wounds of war. Now it was up to them to honor that sacrifice. "I know," she said finally, turning to face him. Her tone was firm, though her eyes betrayed the weight of her sorrow. "Prepare the crew for evacuation. We'll take whatever data we can salvage and get back to the fleet." As the crew scrambled to gather essential systems and records, Elira lingered on the bridge, unwilling to leave just yet. She placed a hand on the control panel, feeling the faint vibration of the dying core beneath her palm. Memories of the trials, the battles, the lessons flooded her mind. The unity it had taught her, the strength it had shown her, the hope it had given her. "Do not grieve, Commander," the Starfire's voice whispered faintly, barely audible even in her thoughts. "My purpose was never to exist forever. It was to inspire change, to awaken the light within you all. You are my legacy now." Tears welled up in Elira's eyes, but she blinked them away. "I won't let your sacrifice be forgotten," she promised. "I'll make sure the galaxy remembers what you've done." With a final pulse of golden light, the core went dark. The Starfire's glow faded entirely, leaving only silence behind. For a moment, Elira simply stood there, letting the enormity of the moment wash over her. Then, with a deep breath, she turned and joined her crew, who were waiting anxiously by the airlock. They boarded escape pods and shuttles, their faces etched with exhaustion and grief. As they launched away from the crumbling remains of the Starfire, they watched as the ship began to dissolve into stardust, scattering across the void like fragments of a shattered dream. Some crew members bowed their heads in reverence. Others wiped away tears. But amidst the sadness, there was also resolve. Back aboard the rebel flagship, the Eclipse, Elira addressed her crew via holographic transmission. Her voice was steady, though tinged with emotion. "Today, we witnessed something extraordinary. The Starfire gave everything to protect us, to remind us of who we are and what we're capable of when we stand together. It may be gone, but its spirit lives on. In every act of courage, every moment of unity, every step toward peace." She paused, allowing her words to sink in. "The Dominion has been weakened, but they aren't defeated yet, and even if they were, our work isn't done. We have a galaxy to rebuild, a future to create. So let this be our vow. We will carry the light of the Starfire forward, not just as soldiers, but as guardians of hope." Her words ignited a spark among the rebels. Cheers erupted, louder and more determined than ever before. They weren't just survivors anymore. They were pioneers, united by the memory of the Starfire and driven by its legacy. In the days that followed, the fleet regrouped, repairing damaged ships and tending to wounded soldiers. Refugees returned to liberated colonies, their spirits buoyed by stories of the mythical warship that had turned the tide of the war. Though the Starfire was gone, its legend spread faster than ever, becoming a symbol of resilience and possibility. For Illyra, the burden of leadership felt heavier, but also clearer. She carried not just the responsibility of commanding her people, but also the duty of honoring the Starfire's ultimate gift, a chance to start anew. And somewhere deep in the cosmos, the faintest glimmer of starlight seemed to pulse brighter, as though watching over them. The war was over, but the scars it left behind would take generations to heal. The galaxy bore witness to devastation on an unimaginable scale: burned planets, shattered fleets, and countless lives lost. Yet amidst the ruins, a fragile hope began to emerge. It came not from victory alone, but from the sacrifices made to achieve it. And at the heart of that hope stood Commander Illyra Vos, her resolve unshaken despite the weight of all she had endured. In the weeks following the Starfire's sacrifice, Illyra led efforts to rebuild what remained of the Outer Rim fleet and the colonies under its protection. Refugee camps transformed into thriving settlements as survivors returned home, their spirits buoyed by stories of the mythical warship that had saved them. Artists painted murals of the radiant vessel, poets composed verses about its light. Historians recorded its legend in books and archives. The Starfire became more than just a memory. It became a symbol of unity, resilience, and the boundless potential of humanity. Illyra herself played a key role in shaping this new era. She founded the Galactic Concordance, an alliance dedicated to fostering cooperation among warring factions and preventing future conflicts. Its principles were simple yet profound: protect life, preserve balance, and honor diversity. These ideals mirrored the lessons she had learned aboard the Starfire, and though the ship was gone, its teachings guided every decision she made. At the inaugural meeting of the Concordance, representatives from across the galaxy gathered aboard the Eclipse. Once bitter enemies now sat side by side, united by a shared vision for the future. As Illyra addressed the assembly, her voice carried both authority and compassion. "We have seen the cost of division," she said, her gaze sweeping across the room. "We've watched as greed, fear, and hatred tore our worlds apart. But we've also seen what's possible when we stand together, not as conquerors or rivals, but as guardians of something greater than ourselves." She paused, allowing her words to resonate. The Starfire showed us that power isn't meant to dominate. It's meant to uplift. That strength isn't measured by how much we destroy, but by how much we create. Let us carry that truth forward. Let us build a galaxy where no one has to fight alone. Her speech earned thunderous applause, but Illyra knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Old wounds ran deep, and distrust lingered between factions. Rebuilding trust would require patience, humility, and unwavering commitment. Still, she found solace in small victories: a trade agreement signed between former adversaries, a joint mission to terraform a devastated planet, a child laughing freely in a rebuilt city. Each step forward reminded her why they had fought so hard, and why the Starfire's sacrifice had been worth it. One evening, long after the meetings had ended, Illyra stood alone on the observation deck of the Eclipse. Stars shimmered beyond the viewport, their light stretching endlessly into the void. She closed her eyes, letting the silence envelop her. For a moment, she could almost feel the presence of the Starfire, its warmth, its wisdom, its quiet reassurance. "You were always the light," she whispered softly, echoing the ship's final message. "And I'll make sure your light never fades." When she opened her eyes again, the galaxy seemed brighter somehow. Perhaps it was just her imagination, or perhaps it was the faint glimmer of starlight pulsing in the distance, watching over them all. Whatever the case, Illyra smiled. The Starfire may have vanished, but its legacy lived on, not just in the stories told around campfires or the monuments erected in its honor, but in the hearts of those who dared to believe in a better tomorrow. As the first rays of dawn broke across the horizon of a newly peaceful world, Illyra turned away from the viewport, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The war was over, but the journey had only just begun. And for the first time in years, she allowed herself to truly believe in hope, in unity, and in the enduring power of light.